right, moving on to the show and tell. Yes, there's. Oh, I believe you have something to show us.
Get up. You don't have to get up. No.
Well, can we come to you?
Take that computer right there. Okay. He's coming up front.
He's had back surgery, that's why they're suggesting he stay put.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Oh my God, look at that.
Yeah, you can just cover this thing here, right in front.
So, I haven't been to a meeting in about 5 months. So this is my progress to date, a little slowed down due to a back injury. But I've started the...
I'm not trying to upstage there.
I've done the freezes, which are, a lot of people have asked what that is. It's not painted on. They're actually prints from just plain printer paper that has been sealed with a satin protective coating, both front and back, and then glued on with a glue stick. I built both quarter galleys. Those were quite the challenge. I ended up doing them several times. And then, did some work on the stern, so all of the freezes on the stern are complete, and begun putting on some of the stern decorations, and did a little bit more painting in the bow. That's where I'm at today. And then what Gene is showing, I intend to trennel the hull, and so right now this is just kind of laying out where the trennels will go. Nothing's been placed yet. Eventually we'll finish up the hull so I can work on the inside.
You use neutronics.
I'm going to be using bamboo. So Kenny has a video on how he took bamboo skews, put them all down, and then ran them through a draw plate. That's what I'm doing.
Fascinating.
I still have to make a lot more of this size hull. But that's one.
Yeah.
I take it you're not gonna put any copper plate on it.
No. So this particular, the Niger class frigate, they didn't get the copper plating till late in their career. In fact, Alarm was the very first British ship to have the copper plating, which was part of this class. If I had found enough information on Alarm on how it was, the figurehead and the decorations and stuff, I would have probably built it and then covered it, just simply because it's unique being the first one. But I didn't find any information. Winchelsea is literally the only one out there that really has well documented as to how she looked.
One of the galleries really look nice.
I will say was absolutely challenging to go do. It was the hardest thing I've ever modeled. Like I said, I think I went through like 3 attempts to make it work.
The individual tiles on the.
They are. The roofs are individual pieces of cherry, sanded down to less than a 1/64th. And glued in place. Everything that is in the quarter galleys except for the lower decoration is all cherry wood.
And you printed the friezes, you designed them yourself?
I'm sorry?
You designed the friezes yourself? You printed it yourself?
No, Chuck, this is obviously based on Chuck's kit. The freezes he pre-did. However, I went through about a ream of paper trying to get them to size exactly to my model so that as you move down the hull, they are symmetric all the way down, as well as the stern. Mine were not quite the width that he had on his, and so I had to adjust them to get them to fit correctly. And it literally used up a whole cartridge of ink as well as a ream of paper to get them to be where I
It's
wanted.
beautiful, beautiful. Really nice.
I've said, thank you. I've said this a couple times, but in John's mom's memory, this kit would never have started. She gave me maple through John to actually do all the planking of the hull. So appreciate that. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have gotten to actually build it. A lot of maple went into this.
Up close, it's incredibly good.
May I ask a question? May I ask a question?
Yes, John.
The bar running, the two apparatuses running down the false keel, what are those for?
That's I have an Amante keel clamp, and that's the pieces that go on the bar that clamps the keel. I have reversed it, used it down the center bulkhead so that I can literally flip the model. And was it July I gave the TikTok? In the July meeting, I showed that in the apparatus, I have a power arm that everything sits into. And that way I was able to flip the hull, bear the hull, and then plank the hull in that jig.
My second question is, I don't know your name, but may I communicate with you? Have you put something on MSW?
I have not. I am a member, but I have not done a build log on it. By all means, you may communicate. I think I'm in the roster. Sean Maloon. It's Maloon.
I will make sure I get your email address through Ryland, and beautiful model. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. This is 3 years of effort, or it'll be 3 years Christmas.
Very nice. Excellent. Now get it out of the
Follow
way.
me.
All right, who's next over here? You got, okay, yeah, John, why don't you, let's talk about that then.
Yeah, it used to be said that you didn't want to follow Gene with your show and tell. Now it's you don't want to follow Sean with your show and tell.
Yours is finished.
Oh, it's finished.
God, that's gorgeous.
I don't think that I ever brought this model to a meeting when it was finished. So I think
Put it in the stand.
yeah, well, it's in the taco stand. But the last time I brought it, I hadn't quite finished the rigging. But then it made a 600-mile journey to Kentucky, where it sat for 5 years. And then last month, it made a 600-mile journey back to Kentucky. No damage. So I was pleased that certain things held together, because you're always just a little leery about that. This is the, as the design goes, this was the sardine carrier, William Underwood. And the plans that I found that I used were drawn by Art Herrick. Some of you old timers who remember who Art Herrick is. He lived up in New Hampshire or Vermont and was a good model builder. But I don't believe he drew the plans originally, because I have another set of plans of the same boat that have a different name signature in the title block. But he drew it, and and he called it the William Underwood, which was a sardine carrier that actually existed. And I thought it would make a nice model for my mom. And so I built this for her when she turned 90. Okay, now she was just 95 this past year. And I named it over here. You can see I put her name on it. I named it Mary Ann. And I guess so that they didn't have much controversy, I changed the title of it to mackerel seiner, which I thought sounded a whole lot better than sardine carrier. It's in 1/4 to foot scale. It's the same scale as the red hull here and the Winchelsea that you just saw. So you see what about a 78-foot boat is like in the same scale. It's a nice that when they're in the same scale, you can make a good judgment of size and whatnot. But it's back now, and it's now going to reside for a little while in the Monarch case at the taco stand, I guess.
All righty, moving around the table. Anybody there? There. Oh, what do you got?
Just a quick tell, going back to the United States.
Yes.
I looked it up, Okaloosa County.
Okay,
It's a stone's throw from Pensacola.
okay, very good. All right, now we know where it's going to end up. All righty. Done.
A project that traumatized my granddaughter when she glued her fingers together. This is going to be a wreath centerpiece for another museum.
Oh, cool.
She helped me with it, and there was a little accident, but we fixed it. Copious amounts of super glue.
Very nice.
So that's almost like a handful, isn't it?
Almost.
Yeah, center of
It's
the
not
wreath.
quite. You can see
Yeah, Christmas wreath.
got quite a bit of glue and paint on it because it's going to be out and exposed to the weather. But she helped me with some of the parts. She got to operate the chainsaw, or not the chainsaw, but the table saw, which wasn't turned on, but she thought she was doing something. So
How old is she?
8.
8.
Yeah. She got tired of helping grandma in the kitchen with canning apples, so it's too much work. So she came out to me.
The sails are made of wood?
Yeah, balsa. We carved it and kind of made it look wrinkly and furrowed, and
It really is amazing.
Oh, that's very nice.
And like I said, it's got quite a bit of paint on it to keep it, make it somewhat weatherproof, and then the wreath will have a couple oyster shells on it and some other odds and ends.
Send pictures when you're done.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Someone must make it away with that.
Took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
But, I got to get it finished, but I don't want to buy cheap craft store wreath. I have to go out in the woods, and it's too early to go to the Christmas tree farm that my friend owns. Cut greens, but I'll steal some greens from someone.
Has it got a name?
I'm sorry.
Does it have a name?
No, it's just a generic skipjack profile.
Even after your granddaughter.
Good.
Yeah.
Figure out some way to get her name on there. Print a decal and put it on there for her.
What's her name?
Lonnie.
Milani. Could name it SG Milani. Super glue Milani.
So, she runs in, and I'm running after her with a bottle of debonder. It's okay, it's okay. Yeah, it was quite funny. But something different, and unique, and glue, seasonal. So I'll give pictures to us when I get it done.
Well, thank you, Don. All right, who else in-house? How about, Mort, you got something for us today?
I'm coppering. I'm just about finished coppering the hull of the Diana, as you can see. And when I copper, I use contact cement. I buy it in the small cans, and I do it in a well ventilated area. I use the Wellwood contact cement, and I wear a respirator mask, so it's no problem really with the odor, with the fumes. And I like the contact cement because once you apply it, you have a few seconds to adjust the hull, the plate, And if you see a plate that's out of alignment, even days later, you can apply heat, which I do with my plank bender, and I can readjust the copper plate, so it's not a problem. And and for small areas along the water line, or if the lines of the plates converge and I need an acute angle, I use crazy glue. And that's where I'm up to now. I'm just about finished. I'm going to start painting the hull next.
What model is that?
The Diana, the Caldecraft Diana. That's the one I got for $5 at an auction. It's my second Diana. First one I paid full price for years ago, about 7-8 years ago. This one I got Christmas. It was a New Jersey Club auction.
Very good,
Thank
Mort.
you.
I suggest you're missing the best part about modeling with that mask. Joshua, what have you got for us today? Haven't seen you in a while.
Hey guys, how you doing? Yeah, I don't know. Have I talked to you guys about the sub chaser? You got to let me. I was hoping if you could allow me to share my screen.
All right.
But I don't know. Have I mentioned the sub chaser that I've been working on by any chance? No.
I don't know. I know about it.
Oh, okay.
Well, go ahead.
So anyhow, yeah. I through unfortunately one of our passing members, I inherited this sub chaser. It's a club project for the Philadelphia Ship Model Society. There's about 4 or 5 other members that are working on this project or have completed it. And so I kind of inherited it with a completed hull, but I kind of had to take it from there. So I decided to adopt the model, and in doing that, I picked up this book, Hunters of Steel Sharks. It's written by a descendant of a gentleman, his name's escaping me right now, who commanded one of these boats. He was ensign in the Navy, and what I found interesting in it is they gave command to these boats. It's a 110-foot sub chaser used in World War I, primarily for submarine blockade. It wasn't very successful in terms of killing a submarine. I think they had 2 reported sinkings. But they were very good at doing blockade, and they were powered by 3 gasoline engines that they started using compressed air. They needed engines that they could start and stop very quickly, and really they would operate in a squadron of 3 and run around and shut the engines down and drop the hydrophone through the hull, or they had other listening devices that they would use, try to get an angle on a submarine, and then they would run up and continually run up, get closer, shut the engines down, listen again, and then they would try to sort of guess where the sub was, and then they would go into a firing pattern, and they would launch depth charges off the stern of the boat 2 or 3 times, and they would fan out, and they would use a Y gun, which would launch overboard on port and starboard, and then they would run forward and launch at those angles, and basically kind of create like a flower deployment of these depth charges, and in hopes to maybe sink a sub. So this is a 135 scale model, so it's about 3 feet long. And there's a lot of research on this model out on subchaser.org. And one gentleman did this really excellent model of a 3D model of SC-93, which is actually the boat that is featured in Hunters of Steel Sharks. That was the primary boat that ensign captained. And interestingly, the Navy would chase after, and they would put the boat in command of people that were sort of rich upper class into young guys that were into yachting, because they would sail these boats across the Atlantic, and they were one of the chief complaints of the boats, as you can see, it's fairly long and doesn't have a lot of width to it, is that basically the boat wasn't happy unless it was burying the gunnels in even the calmest sort of sea. So it was a fairly wet boat to be on. Anyway, this gentleman on subchaser.org did a really great 3D model of this, and from what I've seen so far, it's fairly mostly correct. And I've been kind of chasing after sort of this and sort of in sort of features. However, the book indicates that the whole ship was painted gray, and in fact, on the bow there would be a giant, bullseye sort of emblem that so from the air planes could tell what squadrons were operating together. So here's another photo of it, and there's other like closer up video pictures that sort of help you see a lot of good detail. So on the roof of the pilot house, they had these indicator lamps. So these boats operated mainly under radio silence, but they were lit up like Christmas trees. And they would really try to do most of their signaling visually. And they operated this enormous arrow to sort of indicate what's called a bearing arrow. And according to this model and the research I've seen, these lights were attached. So I'm building this model as an RC, and I plan to illuminate that feature as well as the navigation lights and the searchlight that's on the roof of this pilot house. Some other interesting details. A lot of these details in the Dumas kit are really not included. It's a fairly basic kit, so I'm fairly deep in scratch building land. So this is part of the RC work. I was trying to figure out how I was going to this is my first RC boat. I wanted to make sure we decided to go with a 3-to-1 transmission. So the kit only has you do a centerboard prop, but the actual boat had 3 propellers. So that's how I'm modeling this. And one of our members came up as a machinist, master machinist, and he designed and built this transmission. And he made additional ones for me and another member, which we were very thankful for. And to sort of put a base to them, and this, again, I was just kind of feeling an idea. This is basically 2-part clay that I used to create kind of a flat base for the servo that you see here on the left, and then the transmission and the motor. That motor is a rock crawling motor for a 110 RC car, but I wanted to make sure I had a lot of torque. Learned all about turns in a motor. So basically, the more turns that you have in a motor, which is basically the number of times a wire is wrapped in parts of the elements of the motor. I'm not an electrical engineer, but the more torque you get out of it. The lower the number, you get a lot more speed. Everybody's always showing the interior of their boat, so I decided to paint mine black and kind of show off the mechanics, and it just kind of made everything look kind of consistent. But the other note about the clay is it added a lot of weight to the boat. By the time I got done putting the deck on this, it already weighs, with the battery, weighs 4 pounds. And one of the other members' RC boat that's completed weighs 5.5 pounds. So I already ate up a lot of weight for ballast. And a lot of it sits in the stern, so I need to have at least something to put it in the bow. The transmission had a little bit of an issue in the trial run. These 3 idler gears are just sitting on these rods, and they kept working themselves out of the motor. So we had to put new idler rods in there that were longer and then attach these collars so that they would stay in the transmission, because all of a sudden you'd end up just running off one prop. So I had to really make sure that I had all this figured out before I put the deck on, because there's no way that transmission's ever coming out. So this is with the deck on it now. You can see that I have the gunnels on and started building the deck houses. So one of the prominent features of this model is, in my opinion, is this 3-inch pull gun. They used to have one at the Navy Museum, but they took it out. So thankfully somebody and posted on substation.org took basically every photo you can of every angle of this gun. I also found technical schematics, which has prompted me to take on learning, as I'm trying to think through what tool am I going to learn to how to scratch build all this stuff, right? I mean, am I going to learn how to use a lathe? I decided I'm going to go down the road of using a 3D printer. So I bought an Elegoo Saturn III Ultra, and this is going to be sort of my senior project. It's pretty complicated, so that's not my starting point. So I started building the pilot house, and the kit would basically have you build this armature, and they would have you use these plastic panels and close it like a box, and then use these stickers. And seeming also for the portholes, use stickers. So we're not doing that. I think that looks kind of cheesy. So I started scratch building my own pilot house here. The wood chipped away on me a little bit here and there, but I'm going to use putty to kind of clean that up. And I'm using old CD cases run through the table saw for windows. So it's going to be a completely viewable inside to the pilot house. I want to illuminate it. And again, in the 3D model, the guy detailed the interior, which I thought looked fairly accurate enough for my opinion. And this is what I'm chasing after for the pilot house. So before I get too far in the pilot house, I was thinking, well, I need to start making some of these details because I can't enclose the pilot house without having some of these in place, mainly this flag locker and the binnacle and the ship's wheel and the clocks. And also, as I'm building front to back of the pilot house, I'm trying to build in these details. And I was thinking about, well, how am I going to do these flag lockers? They look like squares, but they run angles here in the corners. And I was sort of having anxiety about trying to do that in wood. And I was like, wait a minute, I have a 3D printer. This is what I'm supposed to be figuring out. So this is my attempt. This is my first project that I kind of did for myself in FreeCAD, which is a free AutoCAD program you can download. It's open source, and thankfully on YouTube there's a guy who does tons and tons of videos on this. And I did a few projects following along on his YouTube videos, and from that I was able to create this part. And then I printed it, and then it went into the model, and I'll call it kind of a success from there. So I got to build another one kind of opposite. It's a little askew. If you notice here, it's 4 boxes on this side, 3 boxes on this side. So the ship's wheel is a little, asymmetric. It's not right in the center. So I'm going to try to replicate that. So I have to kind of rebuild this part to accommodate that. So right now, this is kind of where I'm at. As I said, I got the gunnels and the cleats and all in place, or for portholes, I had these nice brass grommets. Did result in these portholes probably being a little overscale. They all have clear plastic inserts for windows, yet they're popped out because eventually I'm just going to paint this whole thing gray, and then I'll put the windows back in. And that's where I'm at.
Amazing. Nice.
Very impressive. Very impressive.
Thank you.
Josh, do they have they had active sonar during that period. So why did they stop and start listening? Were they on passive mode so they didn't give indications that they were there? What?
Based off of my reading in the book, they didn't have sonar. They were basically using listening devices. So they'd have to stop the engine so they could get that noise out of the way so they could hear the engines of the submarines.
They had to have something like a hydrophone, right?
They did. Yeah, they had a hydrophone. It was basically a T that came through a housing through the hull.
Okay.
And they would drop that down, and then they would listen. And it had 2 prongs on the end, and from that they were able to kind of left and right were able to kind of come up with an angle.
Okay. All right. Is your 3D printer resin or?
It's a resin printer. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Josh.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right, let me Joshua. Mike, what do you got going?
Unmute. I got something to share. Can I share my screen?
Your way.
Okay. Make this into a slideshow, but the window is on top of it. There we go. Slideshow. Beginning. So I'm still in the moving process. I haven't done any models this or repairs to my damaged models to move yet, but I made myself a cabinet for all the parts that I have. And so this is my project last week. I've got 2 deep bins on the bottom for long bins, and then I've got a bunch of shelves for smaller bins. And then on the back side, I've got a place for all the wood I've collected over the years. Some going back to the 70s, some from auctions. Um, and it's all made with no nails or screws other than attaching the wheels. So had to cut out all the slots to hold it together. And they have maple plywood here. They don't have birch plywood. So I ended up with maple plywood. It took one sheet to make it. And I did had to do some creative clamping. You see two clamps, the blue clamps butted together because I didn't have enough long clamps. I went to Harbor Freight and bought some more before I put on the bottom. I think those blue clamps came from an auction, and I got 3 Harbor Freight clamps in the foreground holding things together. First time I've ever used dowels across the corner to reinforce the strength of the corner, and I've got trenolls on some of the shelves just to reinforce the sides. And there it is in my office/modeling room. And it's 4 swivel casters, so I can just spin it around wherever I need it. I used iron-on edging. I started cutting for the front of it where the bins go. I started cutting birch to try and make strips, but I decided that just wasn't worth the effort to cut it on a table saw and then sand or plane forever to get the blade marks off and the burn marks off. And I ended up buying the birch, which was perfect for doing the corners. The curve on the wood side is my kitchen plate diameter. And now it sits for the moment right next to my toolbox, next to my model table. I have to move the knife display because for the box it was centered. And if I decide I need that space, I can roll it into the cabinet, into the closet to the right, and just roll it out when I need parts. And that's all I got.
Very nice. Well organized.
Yeah, and it took me a little time, not a lot. I'd offered to make some, but I don't know how I would get them from Georgia to Virginia. So if everyone wants to come down to Georgia, I'll make you one.
Well, make a vote now.
Yeah, that's coming up soon. I'm still getting the garage set up. Okay, so how do I stop sharing? Stop share. There we go.
All righty. Let me see. Who's next? Joe, how about you? You got something for us today?
Not today, but I sent a note to Rylan about something for a future topic. So I'll beg off today.
All righty. Well, we'll look for you next time. Let me see. Warren, come on, fess up.
No, I'm just still putting frames on the sloop speed well right now, and that's about it.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. It's a slow process to get. There's a lot of frames. Yeah, there's a lot of frames.
All righty. Have we covered everybody? Mr. Zvertnik.
No, I really don't have anything to share. I've started a Baltimore schooner kit, and this is my first one of that size, and just getting started.
Well, hopefully you can update us next time around.
Certainly.
Can you send us your email through the chat here?
I'll put that in chat.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Unless anyone else has anything.
Can I share something?
Yes, absolutely.
You help me with a baby camera. I want to
Sure.
put my phone on so I can show a photograph. Technology.
All right.
This is one of the main reasons that I haven't been doing much ship modeling in the last 20 years. This is a Cape Dory 28-foot flybridge cruiser that sank in Kingsmill Marina in the hurricane in the Isabel, and I've pretty much been working on it ever since. It was sunk all the way up to the flybridge. We hauled it, rebuilt it, put a new engine in it, and now it's kind of getting old, and I'm getting old. So I'm looking for a new home, so if you're interested.
Sure, right after I divorced my wife.
2 more weddings. Are you looking for a home for the boat or yourself?
I got a home. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, Joshua, that one's for you.
It was yours before the hurricane or only after? It was yours before the hurricane or only afterwards?
Okay,
Did you own the boat before the hurricane? When it sank? Yeah.
I brought in the progress of my patrol yacht. As you can see, there's the hull in the flesh. I've just started the planking scheme on it. And I've got a few slides to kind of illustrate how I got to this point. As you are aware from, there we go. Yeah, you just open up as a picture. There we go. We can maximize that.
Okay, are y'all seeing this online?
No.
Can you share it?
I see a red boat.
Okay, that's the
First is
camera.
with me,
We need to go to share.
Share the screen. It's the easiest way.
Share the screen?
Yeah.
Y'all seeing this then?
Yes.
Okay. All right. As I introduced it last month when I started this project, this is a yacht that was built for the Fisher family from the Body by Fisher fame in 1929. And it was acquired by the Navy at the onset of World War II, converted to a patrol yacht. And the brief history on that is that my father-in-law served aboard it, hence my interest in this particular model. So this is what it looked like as a yacht. We go to the next one. And as always, all models begin with a pile of wood outside of the building. You have frames out of plywood and sheathed in 1/8" basswood. I went with 1/8" as opposed to 1/16 because I wanted a little more meat on the bone for shaping and correcting. And there were in my calculations or framing, which there were none. So I have lots of meat shaved out. All right, next. Pardon?
What species was the plywood?
Cheevers. Yeah, I mean, because it's going to be buried in the hull, just something, just give it some. No, I used for the framing, the sheathing?
Yeah.
Oh, no, basswood.
No, the actual
Frame.
plywood.
Yeah, 1/4" plywood, yeah.
Regular.
Yeah, just 1/4" cheap plywood. Yeah, exactly. And here I laid out some of the parts from drawings that I generated from Photoshop, which I talked about last month in size. So just laying it out for cutting. All right, next. And of course, there are some of the blanks, and you can go on to the next. And these were all components that would nicely key together to form a rigid framework. Next. And here we go, all pieced together and aligned. And this is a method that I like to use because it guarantees that your hull's going to be fair. Just match up all the lines. Can't go wrong. And at this point, then I reduce the size of the frames by a 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch to compensate for the thickness of the planking material. All right, next. And here comes the planking. It's rough and tumble, just slather the glue and get it to fit, because I wasn't concerned with smoothness at this point, just getting material on frame.
How wide are those things?
Pardon?
How wide, 1/4 inch?
It depends. On the bottom, the garbage strakes, I can go, wider, in flat areas. When you start getting around the bilge, then I had to cut them down to maybe 1/2 inch strips or so to get it around the door, sure, because the basswood at that stage, unless I wanted to steam it, soak it, try and get it to bend, just wasn't going to happen. So I just cut them down and just glued them on. And this was the slowest. Next, this was the slowest process because it just takes time to watch the glue dry. I used just carpenter's glue at this stage. All right, next. And there's the whole pretty much paired and finished up at this point. Now comes the sanding and the scraping and the cursing and the bondoing and the next, and the potting. So outlining some of the areas, using the templates that I had used to create the frames, and had to go and make sure that where I am is where I want to be. Next. And of course, Bondo. I like to use this stuff. I mean, it's easy. The hull's going to be painted, so I don't care what's underneath it. Next. Fills in a lot of the rough areas and, shallow areas and so forth. Gives the hull a lot more smoother shape. And it's just a constant back and forth. Here's the slot I cut to mount the bow, well, whatever it is, the nose. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, that section there. Yeah, you can just stay right there, that's fine. And the fairing and the smoothing continues with more Bondo. And here I started to apply the bulwarks around the deck. This represents the main deck area. And from here I had to build the extension for the fantail. Next. Next. Laying out some of the cutting, the drawings and so forth, to kind of eyeball how I wanted to assemble the fantail, because the only thing holding the fantail on would essentially be the bulwark sheathing, so it's fairly fragile back there. Next. And next. And this is some of the major components, and then from here I would bear it in with the bulwarks and smooth out the rough edges. Next. Okay, the rail caps I have scraped out of basswood strips, and I have a set of these scrapers, and if you don't have it, it is very valuable. Next.
Where do you get those?
I forget where I bought them, but there's the name. Shapers. You can go online to.
I think Micromox sells them.
That's probably where I got them, because I
see
used to do a lot of business through them.
See the logo there for Casino Latina.
Yeah.
So wherever they sell stuff.
I got a set from just a
I just-
shop online.
Yeah.
I just Googled it.
So they're
Amazon
around.
has them, Oak Ridge Online, eBay. There's a lot of places.
That's everything.
Mr. Photo Etcher can make them out of brass, whatever shape he wants.
Well, these are stainless steel, so
Yeah.
they hold a nice sharp edge.
I'm just saying if you needed a shape that wasn't there,
Oh yeah, I guess you could.
you're just shaping basswood, the brass would be hard
Yeah.
enough.
Okay, next. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend using basswood for this process. Harder wood certainly scrapes better. But because I was going to paint it anyway and not be a natural wood finish, I didn't really care because, you know, I could always fill it and sand it smooth.
Amazon already.
Yeah, it comes in. And here is the shape of the grill of the cap. Okay, next. And then that was applied. And once the hull was finished, as far as smoothing it, it's time for primer. Get outside and have my way with it. And that's pretty much as it appears today, shy of the plating, which I started to do work on next. And there's the fantail. Still a lot of pinholes and sanding yet to do, even after primer. I mean, I'll probably go through at least a half a dozen or more sanding and priming steps to get the hull completely sealed and all the little pinholes filled in. All right, next. Adding some of the rub rail details. Next. And again, primed, sealed, ready for sheathing.
How do you attach the rub rails after the primer? What sticks?
Super glue. I mean, it'll stick to the paint. If I were concerned about it coming off, you can scrape a little bit of paint away or so. But super glue holds fairly well, and it's only plastic half rod, so it's not going anywhere. And if it does, all I need is 20 years out of it.
Hey, Gene, I probably missed it from the first presentation, but I guess is this going to be an RC model? I guess not.
No, I've given up on RC models. You know, between my back and running friends, all of that stuff, hauling it to the. I'm going to build everything just as a static display. Although this would be a perfect candidate for something like that. It's got a good size and it's got plenty of stability. It's a nice fat
It'd be great to see it on the water.
I used photographs of the ship in dry dock to help me lay out the plating. And after studying the pictures, zooming in really close, I was able to deduce a fairly accurate plan. I don't have access to the actual plating scheme, but this would serve for the major strakes, which was about the only thing you could really see. Seams and things were all probably covered up in paint. You would never see them unless you went really up close. So I use photographs like this next to lay out the plating, and then the way I decided to do the plating was to scree on putty with masking tape. I would put masking tape down to create a line, and then I would double up the masking tape to give me a little more thickness. Then I would scree on some Bondo putty. Once it's cured and dried, then you sand it down smooth, and what's left next is a hard edge that would, next. That would simulate.
Can I ask a question about the Bondo glazing compound? Yeah. It shrinks, right?
What?
It shrinks, does it not?
No, Bondo does not shrink, and the glazing putty, the red stuff that is used to help fill pinholes and things in the Bondo, no, it doesn't shrink. It's automotive and it's durable, so, and it's easy to work with.
I've used Nitrostan, and that tends to shrink. So that's why I asked the question.
I'm not familiar with that product. I use regular Bondo for gross filling and shaping, and then I'll use the glazing putty to help create an edge to simulate the strakes, the plating. And here you have it. For a smaller scale, you could probably get away with masking and just laying a heavy coat of primer. But for this scale, I wanted a little more thickness to the plate. So at this scale, 1/10 of an inch or .1 would be what, about a quarter inch? No, a half inch thick. Quarter inch, I don't do math in public. Yeah, something like that.
I like this pan, it's probably a viewport.
Oh, yeah. Nice pad.
Incriminating evidence.
Next. And here's a closer up detail. And after some more shaping and sanding and smoothing, you get a nice plating effect.
Hey, Gene.
So,
yeah. So when I'm looking at this, is it like one strake is high, one strake is low, and one strake is high, or are they all kind of still the same height and you're sort of keeping the seam?
The garboard strakes, according to the drawings that I have, were lap straked for a couple of lines. The shear strakes were in and out, down to about the bilge line.
Okay.
And then they transitioned to the kind of lap strake.
Make sure I understand correctly. You pull the masking tape away after everything dries to leave the depression?
Yeah, you sand it smooth first.
Yeah.
And then the masking tape will protect that edge to the thickness that you want, of the masking tape. Then you carefully pull the masking tape away, and it.
Your edges didn't flake away at all when that?
No, I mean there was maybe an occasional chip or something, very minor, but that can easily be touched up with a little more glazing putty and resanded.
What grit are you using, Gene?
I use automotive tape because it's a little thicker than painter's tape. Better quality. Oh, are you cheating?
Putting on all your
What grit are you using, Gene?
Well, like I said, this is only my 5th or 6th series of priming and sanding. So obviously I've got more sanding and priming. Besides, when did you ever see a smooth piece of steel?
Exactly.
Oh, okay, never mind. Next. And I think that might be the last slide.
After it's been in service for a while, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't put the all the little critters and the paint and the chips and the. Yeah.
Hey, Gene, what grit sanding paper do you use for this?
At this stage, I'm probably down to about 320.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then for the final, before I go to the final paint, maybe 400 or so. I mean, I don't need to go much further than that.
But I mean, when you initially lay down the glaze and then you're for the panel and then you're trying to smooth that down.
Oh, first time I'll probably use 120, maybe 150 grit just to kind of cut quickly.
Yeah.
And transition to 2.
I just wonder what you were using that wasn't tearing up the tape.
Well, just don't push very hard. I mean, when you start seeing the tape starting to appear, then you've gone deep enough.
Right.
And I doubled up the tape to give me an extra thickness to the edge. So if you rough up the tape a little bit, that's not going to hurt anything.
Gene, you wet sand, don't you?
I tried a little bit on this, and it made such a mess. I decided that, just to do without. And besides, if it's a wood hull, and if I cut through the primer and I get it wet, and then you introduce all kinds of other problems. So it doesn't have to be glass smooth. Because by the time, I get down to the 6th or 7th, sanding, it's going to be smooth enough for the final coat. I mean, here you're looking at it grossly.
Doesn't the glazing compound clog your paper?
No, actually, it powders up very nicely.
Really?
Sheds the primer that clogs up the paper, But just change your paper. Moving on. Use a what do you call it? A sandpaper eraser. It's a big gummy eraser that carpenters use to clean their sandpapers with, and it works great. You just rub it on there, and
light brown.
Yeah, it comes in it's a stick about an inch.
8 inches.
Yeah. Yeah, I highly recommend that because you can, if you have little sandpaper sticks or something, it'll clean the paper up very quickly. And you can extend the life of your sandpaper. All righty. If nobody else has any other questions, we'll take a brief pause and then get on to the presentation.
Before you go, you mentioned the name of the original owners, the Fisher family.
Yes, that was the Nakota was the name of the vessel that they had made.
Is that the same family that sponsored the Canada Cup? And
I have
then
no idea. They were in automotive, automotive body works, Body by Fisher. It was that family.
Oh.
So they had some bucks. This was an enormous yacht. Had a crew of 40, and they built it in 29 for I don't know how much, and it sold it to the Navy at the onset of World War II for conversion to the USS Zircon as a patrol yacht. In fact, a little trivia, Ernest Borgnine served aboard a patrol yacht at the same time, a very similar looking vessel. I forget the name of it. It was named after another gem. But yeah. All righty. If nobody has anything else, we'll take a quick brief pause here.